I'm going to start with a riddle. You've probably heard it. There was a horrific accident outside of town, two-lane highway, lots of emergency vehicles. A father and son were coming back from a sporting event, and unfortunately the father passed away at the scene. The son was rushed to the hospital in pretty bad shape. So the surgeon prepped, rushed into the emergency room, operating room, took a look at the patient and said, "I can't operate. This boy is my son." How could that be? The surgeon is the boy's mom. Yeah, it's a pretty old riddle. Do you remember when you first heard it? Were you able to solve the riddle? If not, you're not alone. I didn't solve it when I first heard it many years ago. Now, Boston University did a recent study with their own students, so about 200 of their psychology students and more than 100 children aged 7 to 17. They asked them the riddle. So what percentage do you think of these young folk were able to solve that riddle? We like to think, at least 50%. But no, only 14% of the psychology students and 15% of the children were able to solve the riddle. There is another plausible answer to the riddle, which was that the surgeon is the boy's second father. But for the purposes of that study and this gender equity session, the answer to the riddle is the surgeon was the child's mother. So why is it, do you think, we have such a hard time getting into the headspace that women can be surgeons? One reason may be that because in the United States, about 87% of surgeons are men. So that begs the question then, why? Are men better at surgery than women? Let's go back in history a little ways and look at the story of Mary Edwards Walker. Mary Edwards Walker graduated with honors from Syracuse Medical College in 1855. So she graduated, she got married, she set up her medical practice, and then in 1861, the Civil War broke out. So she said, "I want to volunteer. I want to be a surgeon in the Union Army." Well, they took one look at her and they said, "How about you be a nurse?" So she showed them what she could do. And in 1863, she became the first woman surgeon in the U.S. Army. She was very brave. She went across enemy lines many times, treating the wounded. In 1864, she was just completing an amputation and she was captured. So she was held as a prisoner of war. After the war, Mary Edwards Walker was given the highest distinction by the military. And still today, she is the only woman to ever have been awarded the Medal of Honor. Now in 1870, she was arrested in New Orleans, for impersonating a man. So she went to court in her long jacket and trousers and her Medal of Honor, and they recognized her and they dropped the charges. She said, "I don't dress like men. I'm not wearing men's clothes. I'm wearing my clothes." She said the women's fashion in that time was restricted movement. It was unhealthy. It was squeezing your organs and all these yards of fabric that drug through the mud, not to mention how expensive it was to dress like that. So Mary Edwards Walker, she clearly pushed the envelope in a lot of ways, didn't she? And the United States benefited from the fact that she did. But I have to think, was she really the only woman who was qualified and talented enough to be a surgeon in 1861? Let me see a show of hands of those of you who think there was probably at least one other woman in the United States talented enough to be a surgeon in the Union Army in 1861. What about 10? I think there might have been 10 women talented enough to be a surgeon. Anybody want to go for 50? But seriously, how many women who had the talent to be a surgeon or any of the other myriad other careers that were restricted to men, how many of them did not get to fulfill their potential? And how did we get to the point where we were restricting women from fulfilling their potential and sharing their talents with those in need? We're going to explore that now as we move into the next exercise.